Well, here we are. It's been a long time. It's been a long COVID time. I have not had very much of a chance to sit down and really do a love at first right in a really, really long time for this channel. And I have been slogging through writing um, this you know epic historical sort of romance with fantasy elements and mystery elements. And I'm almost done with the second big book in the series, which is really a lot of fun. Excuse all the the moving about. Um, and now that my kids are back in school, which is just great because I can actually make one of these videos without someone coming in and asking for me to make them lunch or something, or asking a question, or just wanting a hug, which I love to give. So that part of it's wonderful. Um, but I, what's perfect is that what I want to talk about today is so on point with love at first right, because I do want to talk about love. I want to talk about the changing concepts of love through history. Especially, as a historical fiction author, I write historical thrillers. Every single book, every series I write really does have some sort of historical element. I'm a really, really big fan of history, and I so enjoy reading about the past and trying to put myself there, imagine the people of that time, imagine the characters of that time. And I do love to think about how certain uh, elements of our culture change, and even how the way that we view emotions, and the way we view family, and how to care for other people, how that might evolve, and how one might then write a character that appeals to a modern sensibility, but also honors where this person would have come from at that time. And I think today we can start at the beginning. We can talk about Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey, because I think that really gives us a first real look into the way ancient people looked at love, and our first really big literary look at that. I mean, I think the first love poem is Egyptian, and I think it's something like 4 or 5 thousand years old, and it is actually very beautiful and sensual. I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's something like husband, let me love you, let me breathe you in. It's really very beautiful. But overall, when you read about love in really old texts, old literature, it is more of a practical family affair. Let me explain that. Like in Homer and the Odyssey, um, you have the king of Ithaca. You have Odysseus, the king of Ithaca, and he has just come back from the Trojan War, and it takes him 10 years to get back. And the big love story, of course, is between Odysseus and Penelope. But it's really not written as this passionate love story where these two people could never find anyone like the other, and that this is true love. It is a story of faith and faithfulness, and of Penelope waiting for him, right? And when we look at stories of the Bible, for instance, those also tend to be certainly practical, certainly loving, and again in a family sort of way, in a way that is good for society at large. The Bible tells husbands and wives that they must leave the families they were born to behind and go to each other and only turn to each other, which has been incredibly important for the cohesion of society. And you talk to to any man or woman about either a relationship or a marriage where their spouse was too connected to, um, their parents, for instance, and you see real trouble in that relationship. And, as we go on, for instance, into, the stories of King Arthur and Guinevere and Sir Lancelot, those are certainly stories of faith, but there we start getting into passion a little bit more. And what really strikes me when I look back at the way love was portrayed in these old stories is just how um, just how precious it was, how rare it was that that there was a sort of true love, and certainly love and passionate love existed between people, but that was not necessarily what the point of marriage was at that time. And I think when there was a marriage that miraculously involved true love, it was something that everyone took notice of and um, wanted to emulate, wanted to write about. Um, I mean, really, for most people, uh, for a very long time, really until relatively recently, marriage was incredibly practical. And, people needed to work in teams. And, a parent might say, I don't know, he looks pretty good. He's got a goat. And really, two people looked at one another and said, well, this person looks relatively healthy and competent. They will make a good partner. And certainly, I think love grew between people the way it does in any sort of arranged marriage. A lot of arranged marriages are enormously successful and happy and loving, but there was not, until recently, this expectation that we would see someone across the room and that person would instantly just consume us, consume our hearts, and we would know that this is our soulmate and the person that we're going to love for the rest of our lives. And when we come to more recent times, I mean, we can talk about something like Jane Austen's Sense and Sensibility, right, where everyone is still, this is something that everyone today, or everyone, a lot of people still, a lot of readers hold that up as a real gold standard, as a love story. But then just even listen to the title, Sense and Sensibility. It's not just about falling in love, although certainly that's a big part of it. It's a very romantic book, but it's also a very sensible book. And it looks at marriage very sensibly. It says outright that you've got to be careful in the choice of your mate, that you can't just look into their eyes. You do have to look at the more practical parts of this. And it it also says that marriage is for children. It says right out in the text. It really mulls over marriage in many, many times throughout the story and says that marriage is for children. It's for the greater good of society. And it most certainly is, and continues to be, and has been historically. And hopefully we will do a better job of illustrating just how important it is to younger generations, because I think that it has been a miracle for civilization. But anyway, those, what has changed in modern times, and what we must, as historical fiction writers, give a nod to, obviously, in order to make the story worthwhile for a reader and delicious for a reader, it is this sort of true love aspect. And, how to make it work today when we are writing about yesterday, and we want to be accurate, because historical fiction readers often, unless they are really in the historical romance lane, in which case you can fudge it a bit and you can have lots of modern concepts, superimposed onto historical times. But really, tried and true historical fiction readers want the history part to be right. They don't want the characters to sound and behave like people of today. A woman can't be, she can be strong, she can be incredible and intelligent and courageous, but she can't really be a modern day feminist if you're talking about a woman from, the 16th, 17th, 18th century. That does not ring true. And a male character also, he can be chivalrous, he can be wonderful, he can be respectful to the woman that he loves. He can certainly treat her as an equal, and in his personal life view her as an equal, but it would be really unlikely that in a sort of greater societal sense, a political sense, that he would see her as an equal. And that dichotomy is actually very interesting and allows us an opportunity to, you know, explore love and real love and even passionate love, um, in a context that, we might have a difficult time understanding because we are accustomed to having legal protections as well as having emotional protections with someone. Um, it's interesting. I was having a conversation on a podcast with a man named Ricardo Lopez, who has this wonderful podcast and YouTube channel called The Dissenter. And we get together once a year on his show, and we talk literature, we talk reading, and we talk even film and TV and story, basically, and what we love. And Ricardo usually has scientists on, and social scientists and scientists, and all this stuff. So it's quite a departure for him. But he loves to read, and he's just so wonderful to talk to. And the last time we got together, we talked about romance novels, and how even in the last 40 years how they've changed, and how if you look at romance novels in the 60s and 70s, the sort of racy scenes that lead to sex are often rape fantasies, which is so disturbing for us in this day and age. But if you look back at what was happening at the time, there was still an expectation of virginity then. And so, of course, in the romance novels of that time, it would be no, 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 no until the last minute, and then, oh well, okay, because I love you, right? And as cringy as that might seem to us today, it really does make sense in that context. And similarly, when you look at something like the whole sort of billionaire romance genre, which sprang from the 50 Shades of Grey franchise, um, that, of course, makes a lot of modern women, particularly feminists, really cringe because, it has all of these sort of antiquated and yet like hypersexual themes. But, let's look at what's happening today. And the women who might be devouring these are often stretched. They are working and taking care of children. Many of them are single mothers. So when you look at it that way, I mean, does a woman really want a man like that in their life? Probably not. But in a fantasy sense, to have to have a person come in, someone who seems very commanding and has a ton of money and all of this, that person, for all of their for all the trouble they might bring into your life, they also do take away some stress, right? Take away some responsibility. And that is a part of the love fantasy, I think, of recent years. And as writers, certainly we want to write, oh, what's from our heart. And I figure that if I'm writing something that doesn't make my heart swell, then my reader's obviously not going to feel it. But I do think that we need to take a look around us and see what themes might resonate with someone reading about love today. What fantasies might we give a nod to? even if we are writing about people in a historical context, people from really quite a long time ago who have very different mores and might have very different fantasies and might have very different needs. How do we connect those today? So these are all the things that I'm thinking about, especially as I'm going to be starting book 3 of this series as I'm wrapping up book 2. And I do, at this point, I intend for it to be a trilogy. So I also have to wrap up the love story, and I really have um, to make it resonate and to kind of drive in the point of the romance as well as the mystery elements, right? And the thrilling elements and the historical elements. I've really got to tie all those things together. And I'm also starting my 3rd Cold War thriller, which will have a lesser romantic element because it is a thriller, but there is a romance in it nonetheless. And I I'm also thinking about how to approach that romance of these people who are under a tremendous amount of stress and how to accurately address their needs as well as the needs of the reader. So it's great to be back, and I hope you've enjoyed this and it's given us all something to think about. And please, oh, also, I have a new podcast called Cold Podcast. So please go to Apple or the platform of your choice or Spotify and listen to Cold by Victoria Doherty. It's really fun. I mean, I'm really loving doing this. We talk about the creative life, the writing life, and culture, and I'm loving every minute of it.